Welcome back to Shop Talk. Tonight is going to be a really special night. We are going to have a guest, as you can see. My brother-in-law Kyle is going to be on with us, and we're going to talk about comebacks. So stick around and check it out. Okay, Kyle, welcome to Shop Talk. You're our first guest that's actually going to be able to be seen and recorded. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Blake. I've been looking forward to this discussion for a while, and I'm glad we could finally find a time to sit down and do it. So excited to
Absolutely.
talk
It's
about
tough when we
comebacks.
got kids and busy lives, and
Yeah,
but we're finally doing it, and I am pumped. So Kyle here, he is works at Vermeer. He does marketing, right? You do kind of a marketing, like their website type stuff.
yeah,
Why
yeah,
don't you explain what you do there?
yeah. So I'm a digital marketing specialist at Vermeer Corporation here in Pella, Iowa. So basically, what that means is that I help run some of their websites. I focus more on the e-commerce side of the business. So I am always managing new products that are for sale and things that people can purchase online. So it's been a very rewarding job. I've been in it for it's been about 3 years already. So pretty crazy how time flies. So just keep pushing forward, keep looking for new challenges, and right now I think I'm in a pretty good place with this job. So excited to see where it takes me.
And for those of you that are ever interested in a little bit of professional grade photography, Kyle is excellent at that. So you might want to keep him in mind. Also, Kyle doesn't know that I was going to talk about this, but I want to give a little backstory of how Kyle and I actually met. So my sister went to Buena Vista, and so did Kyle, and I went over there to visit. Now, when I was in high school, I'm a couple years older than my sister than Kyle too, but she didn't really date a lot, and so I didn't get to be that big mean brother and protective brother. So like I didn't get an opportunity for that. And I go over and I visit her at Buena Vista, and I walk in her dorm room, and there's this guy sitting there, and super nice guy, smiles, waves, introduces himself. I did not say a word. I did not acknowledge that he existed the entire time. I was there for what, like 2 hours,
Yeah,
a couple hours?
yeah,
I don't even know. I never once said a word to you.
yeah. And I still bring that up to Courtney today.
I'm like, thankfully, if you haven't noticed, we get along way better now. But that was my moment to be a big, tough guy. Thankfully, he never stood up, as I am 5'11" and you are 6'4". So uh, I got to at least feel tough for a day.
Well, I might have height on you, but I'm pretty sure you have a bit more muscle or build on you. So if we ever did get in a fight, I don't like my chances. So
See, this is why I like this guy. He's so flattering all the time, very complimentary. Um, Obviously, Kyle, he works for Vermeer, as we said. He is a rock solid Christian, which is another thing that I love about him. He's a good father, a good husband, which is obviously very important to me, being that he is married to my sister. But he's a godly man, and so I'm really excited for this conversation tonight. He's also very knowledgeable in sports. He's a good basketball player. If you hadn't guessed, he's 6'4". Played college tennis,
yeah,
so he's an athlete.
right.
Don't let him fool you. He's an athlete. Um, but anyways, as we said, we're going to talk about comebacks tonight, and obviously, sports. It's uh, probably what comes to mind the most when we talk about comebacks. So what's a comeback that comes to mind when we started? When you this was kind of your idea to talk about comebacks, and I love it. I think it's going to be a great topic. So what's a comeback that comes to your mind?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the whole idea kind of originated from current events. I know we kind of talked a little bit about it, but if the viewer wasn't aware of what's been going on this past week in the NFL, um, there was a Buffalo Bills player. His name is Damar Hamlin, who is a safety for the Bills, and they were playing Monday night this past week. and he made a tackle on a guy. Didn't seem like it was a big hit or anything. Popped right back up after the play, and then out of nowhere, he just collapsed on the field. Come to find out, he actually had a cardiac arrest right then and there, as millions of people were watching. And he had to get CPR on the field, and they even had to shock his heart to get him to breathe again. So super scary situation. Never happens. I mean, for a sport that's as violent as football is, you think it might happen more often, right? But it just doesn't. And so kind of shook, I think, all the players, all the coaches, um, all the support staff, so much that they didn't even go back on the field. They called it a night, and the game is actually canceled and it won't be replayed. So this young guy, he's only 24 years old. Thankfully, God's been with him, and he's been pulling through and has been improving as the week's gone on. But it just made me think about his journey that's just started this week to recovery, and just thinking about different comeback stories that have happened in the past, and just what a factor hope plays in all of that. And just thinking about, I think of guys like Alex Smith. As you can probably tell, I'm a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. I'm pretty freaking nerdy with all the stuff on the walls, and I even have a hat on for him. So, big fan. And Alex Smith played for the Chiefs for a few years, and he suffered a pretty big injury. I think it was like a fractured tibia or something in his leg that led to like
That was too bad.
17 surgeries, like crazy. And it took like 2 or 3 years. He almost died, but doctors never thought he would walk again. He's a devout Christian, and he just like, I've got to say, I think he just had so much hope, because how do you make it through that experience without it? To like completely, he's walking again. He's living a normal life. Obviously, not playing football anymore, but like that whole experience kind of changed his life in the moment, and he came through it more or less unscathed. So it's just kind of crazy, the things that we go through on this earth. And I think hope plays a pretty big factor in getting through those tough times. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah, a long, long way of saying I think comeback stories is a pretty cool subject to talk about.
I couldn't agree more. That Damar Hamlin story, that kind of, in a way, it almost reminded me of the Dale Earnhardt crash. Like it just didn't seem like it was that severe, and yet all of a sudden he just collapsed. We've seen some really gruesome and disturbing injuries on the football field, and that one just didn't seem to be all
Yeah,
that much. And then he dropped, and they did what, CPR for like 9 minutes.
yeah, insane. Yeah,
But thankfully he's doing well. So thoughts and prayers with him. And thoughts and prayers mean stuff to us. I mean, we know the power of prayer. So
for sure.
happy to see that a lot of people are praying for him and keeping him going. Um, yeah, comebacks are. I think that's such a good point that you're talking about hope. Um, if you don't have hope, a lot of times you just give in. You just give up. And that's one of the greatest things that Christianity gives us, is we have a hope in Jesus, that we have that resurrection life. This isn't it for us.
Mhm.
And so we're able to find that contentment in all circumstances, like Paul talks about. Uh, we're able to have that unspeakable joy and peace of mind, which is a rare commodity, as Phil Robertson talks about.
Yeah.
Uh, especially in today's world, there's not a lot of peace of mind. There's not a lot of contentment. There's not a lot of joy.
Mhm.
And so it really gives us an opportunity in an environment like this to be that joy and to be that light, to be that salt. That's why I always talk about staying salty.
Mhm.
Uh, we can be that very easily in this world and in this society, because there is very low amounts of joy right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, and I
Um,
would just like kind of echo that thought. Like this whole situation with Demar is just an example. Like it's a very public example. Like you can clearly see that this is probably a low point in his life. But like you and I and all the people that we interact with every day, like they might be going through a low point in their life, but it's not that easy to pick up on. They're not literally falling on the floor because their heart stopped, but to them, it's still their low point in their life. And how can we help bring them hope and be that salt in their life to help them get through it?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, there's more obviously when a lot of times when we think of comebacks, it's great to think of the comebacks that are from injury. Those are inspiring. But some of the comebacks, my dog's here. You said, you said,
High faith.
it. Good girl. Um, it's always fun also to think about comebacks when your team does the comeback. They're
Yeah.
behind, and so obviously, being a Hawk fan, uh, immediately when you brought up this idea of talking about comebacks and relating it to sports and in the Bible, the sports side of it, the first thing that came to mind is an Iowa game that I still remember where I was when it happened. I was at my parents' house down in the basement. Hey, um, and it was 2005. We were playing in the Capital One Bowl against LSU. Both teams had really good seasons that year. I think Iowa ended up finishing. Oh boy, she's gonna back into the stand. Just wait, see it. We're gonna have to make a comeback here on recording. Um,
It's happening every day.
and Iowa actually, I think they finished like 10-2 that year. So they were ranked in the top 25, and LSU was also in the top 25. I think they were actually outranked Iowa, and Iowa was ahead like the whole game, and then with 40, I think it was, yeah, 40. I wrote some notes on it just to get some of the specifics, but with 46 seconds left, LSU took their first lead of the game. So you can imagine that's kind of disheartening. That could really make you give up. And like you said, they had hope that it wasn't over yet, and so ended up the very last play of the game as time expired. Drew Tate threw a 56-yard touchdown pass to a senior, Warren Holloway, literally as the time expired. And so they went from being down by 1 point to winning. I think it was 30-24. And
Yeah.
I remember jumping, and you've been in my parents' basement.
Yeah.
You don't have very high to jump.
No, you
And so
don't.
I punched the ceiling. I was so excited. Oh man, I just went nuts. And it was just one of those amazing plays. And what a comeback when you thought it was over.
Yeah.
And how much is that like the story of Jesus? You know, we think that it's over, or for instance, the story even of Lazarus. Um, you know, Lazarus, he's sick, and they send some people to come get Jesus to try and help uh, heal him so that he doesn't die. And Jesus intentionally takes his time, doesn't get there, shows up. What was it? 4 days later, after he's died, 4 days after he's died. So he's good and dead. We
Yeah.
know he's dead. I mean, they didn't even want to open the tomb because they're like, he might be a little smelly by now. But you know, he so Jesus was just told that he died, and he wept, you know. And think about that. Jesus weeps even though he knows he's about to do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
But he still loved, you know, it just goes to show like Jesus was here and he loved people. And so he wept. But then it says in verse 38, and I think this is, what did I say? This is John 11. So 38 through 44. I'll just go ahead and read it and then we'll talk about it
Sure.
because I'd love to get your opinions on this. But it says, then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone was laying against it. Remove the stone, Jesus said. Martha, the dead man's sister, told him, Lord, there is already a stench because he has been dead for 4 days. Now, I think typically sisters just like to say that you stink anyways, but she may have had a point on this one. So Jesus said to her, didn't I tell you if you believed you would see the glory of God? So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you hear me, or that you heard me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd standing here, I said this, so that they may believe that you sent me. After he said this, he shouted with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, bound hand and foot in linen strips, and with his face wrapped in cloth. Jesus said to them, unwrap him and let him go. Now, you talk about a comeback story that doesn't involve, I mean, it involves Jesus in the sense that he performed it, but, and I have heard too, that if he hadn't said Lazarus come out, that we could have like a whole lot of people coming out.
That
Like
would
that he
be
had to be specific to say Lazarus come out.
that would be interesting.
I mean, that's all hope is lost. He's already dead.
Yeah.
And then Jesus shows up on the scene. And as is usual with Jesus, now we have hope
Yeah.
and we have a comeback. And what a great story. And people know that story, whether it's the secular world or Christianity. People love that story because it's just a great story. I mean, how do you even make something like that up? We try to now, but we copy it, but we never, this is where they got that.
Right. Yeah. To me, it's like, or at least for me personally, like I won't speak for you or anyone else, but I I seem to probably lean towards Martha's perspective when something bad happens. You get filled with doubt, you get filled with probably fear and sadness that things aren't working out the way that maybe you had hoped or planned. Um, and just think if Jesus had never come along, like she would have just been left kind of in that same state, and Lazarus would never have been risen. And so it's like for us, like we have to remember that hey, Jesus is right here. Like we can call on him, and he's what will be the provider for us, and he will provide that hope. Um, maybe not be raising people from the dead in today's age, but
Yeah.
like be able to help us through whatever we're going through in life. So
And it's so relatable too, because I don't remember which one of the sisters it was, but he said that he will live again. And she's like, yeah, I know. Like at the resurrection, I know he'll live again. So like she still had that hope. Like they knew about the resurrection back then. They just didn't know how it was going to be attained.
right.
And he's saying, no. Like, I mean, you're gonna see him living today.
Yeah.
Like, but that wouldn't go through your mind. I mean, it shows that even though she had that hope, like it's only natural to have grief to a point where you're upset,
Yeah.
you're mad. I mean, they were mad at Jesus. Like, I get it. We get mad at God, at Jesus sometimes when things don't go our way, but they literally knew Jesus. Like they were at the person. Like, and so it and I love that about the Bible that they include that, because I think sometimes if you want it, they could have taken that out. They could have not had, they could have just left in the part where he comes in and he raises him, but they didn't. They wanted you to know that they're human too. Like all this is legit. This is real. And so that you needed to know that they felt that same stuff that we feel when we lose somebody we love.
Right. And that was when Jesus was literally standing right by them in person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
And of
it's
course,
interesting. No, go
what
ahead.
was that?
You go.
Um, and even better than what he did with Lazarus is what he did with himself. I mean, you talk about the part here. Not that I even really need it, but um, you talk about it. I mean, it was over. This is the guy. This is the leader. He's being led to Calvary. He's being led to be killed. He's been beaten. He's been treated. They thought he was going to be this military leader and lead a rebellion. And so you've got your leader, and now he's hanging on a cross. Yeah, I mean, what a gruesome way to go. You think he's gone, and of course, there's different. I mean, each one records it a little bit differently of what happened as far as you know as he died. One of them records. He says, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Um, Another one recorded. Well, two of them record that. I think another one said, "Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit." Another one said, "It is finished." I don't remember which one it is. Says that, "Please forgive them, for they know not what they do." Uh, so, each one records things a little bit differently, but either way, in the end, it's over. And I do think it's kind of funny that they uh they knew that he had been saying that he would raise himself from the dead,
Yeah.
and which plays into really making us know that this is real, this is true.
Mhm.
And it says the Pharisees and the chief priests talked to Pilate, and they said, "Sir, we remember that while this deceiver was still alive, he said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give orders that the tomb may be secure until the third day. Otherwise his disciples may come, steal him, and tell the people he has been raised from the dead. And the last deception will be worse than the first." And so they did that. They went ahead and sent the guards to make sure that this could not happen. So we know they were there to say, "No, you're not going to pull this trick on us." And yet he walked out of that tomb. He
Yeah.
wasn't carried. He walked out.
Like in doing so, they actually worked for God and his purpose, because now we know for a fact that no one could have taken him out.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, and
Like it's just,
it's amazing.
it is.
And so, on several of them, it talked about that it was pitch black. It was dark at noon. It talks about that at the moment of his death, the veil in the temple tore from top to bottom, of course, signifying, that veil, that boundary between us and God has now been removed. Um,
Yeah.
there was earthquakes. There was people walking out of their tombs. There's the story going on with the two thieves on the cross, and of course, one of the gospels actually records that one of them ended up being saved on the cross because he repented right then and there and believed that Jesus was who he said he was. Um, so all that's going on, everything's really dark. He's now been laid in a tomb. There is no hope. It's over, except for God had other plans.
Mhm.
And so then now we get to he's being raised. He's back, and they go. And of course, it's always interesting that the women were the first ones to know that he came back. Especially, that's just one more reason we know that this is they could have changed all that and lied about that and said, because especially at this time period, women weren't in super high regard. And so coming to let them be the ones to say, "Hey, he's back." Like is it just again, it's just the way God does things is so amazing. Uh, and he was sitting. Let's see here. An angel of the Lord had come down. He would roll back the stone, was sitting on it, and of course that scared the guards, and so they took off. That was in Matthew 28. And feel free to pipe in anything you're seeing in yours. Um, what's really nice is I've talked about it before on here that I have this chronological Bible, so it's kind of all the different stories of different gospels
Yeah,
are
that's
all
pretty
right
cool.
there together. So
Yeah.
what was that?
Well, I was just gonna add, so like John 20, I think it is. So that's when Mary first discovers the tomb
Hmm.
and that it's empty, right? And she her first thought isn't, oh, Jesus is alive. It's, oh, someone stole his body.
Yes.
And even like the first disciples to see that come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
So it's just yeah, it's
There,
crazy to me, like in that situation, how they felt and what their reaction was, and then how Jesus just completely turned it on its side, right? And I think that is really where, I don't know, he proved who he was without any shadow of a doubt, right? I mean, it fulfilled kind of the prophecy, if you will, of what he came
yes.
to do. And like from there on out, like everyone was filled with hope. Like that's how the church got started, was based off of that fact and the hope that came with it. I mean, sheesh, there's not a better comeback story out there than that.
No, there really isn't. And it is interesting in that John 20 that you're talking about. The other disciple who had reached the tomb first, which we know now I think that was John, is
I
who it
think
was. And because him and Peter went running to the tomb. But when he looked in, he finally went in also, looked in, saw he wasn't there, and it says he saw and believed. And it wasn't what he saw that made him believe, it's what he didn't see. He
Mhm.
didn't see the body. And he knew none of them took it.
Yeah,
So he knew it.
start that
Yeah,
over.
so we're gonna jump back in here. Obviously, this is our first little go with this, and we're trying to do it on Zoom and record that way. And we kind of forgot there's a time limit on it, so I'm gonna have to mesh these two together. So you guys will kind of you're you're watching us learn in progress. So next time we'll try to actually keep it within the time limit. Um, but yeah, we're talking about the greatest comeback of all time, and without a doubt, that is Jesus being crucified, stays in the ground for 3 days, and on the third day, he rises again. Uh, and there's stories in here that of things that he did afterwards, after he came back, and the disciples still didn't really get it. They still didn't necessarily believe. And uh, he he's walking through walls. He's like teleporting. I mean, he's doing some really stuff that movies nowadays Marvel just loves. They try to make characters, and he's all in one. So
Yeah.
uh, but he ultimately wants us to go out and baptize others and tell, more importantly, make followers of him. And he wants everybody to know that comeback story, and that he did that comeback story so that all of your comeback stories have a chance to happen, that you have hope. And without that hope, you can't have that comeback, like you said earlier. So by Jesus doing what he did for us, that we didn't deserve it, but he did it anyways. We now have that hope that we can have our own comeback story. It may not be rising from the dead in this way, but someday we are going to have that resurrection, and we have eternal life. Because whether people want to admit it or not, it's okay if you don't want to believe. That's your call. But the way that we see it, you have an eternity that's coming. It's just a matter of where. And I can tell you, I don't want to see anybody down in the other eternity. We want to be in the presence of God for all eternity, and we have that opportunity with Jesus. And so, I mean, go ahead and anything else you have to add as far as this amazing comeback story. It's the comeback story of the ages, of all time. It'll never be topped.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like I just from this conversation, I it's so easy to get kind of bogged down in where you're at with life and just going through the motions. And I think takeaway from me, at least personally, is to try and be intentional about being hope filled. I think that flows over to the people that you interact with every day, and I think it's important to, like you said, to stay salty and try and continue to make this comeback that Christ did, 2,000 years ago, still relevant in today's culture and in the lives of people today. I think that's kind of what we're called to do as Christians in a sense. So yeah, I guess just I hope for you and me and everyone out there listening that we can be hope filled.
Yeah, we can be hope filled, and we still know that there is still one more comeback that he has in mind. He is returning, his second coming, and it will not be like the first. So we're looking forward to that. It might be some scary times, and maybe on one of our next talks or something, we can uh, talk about some of the things that are going on that are related to Revelation, whether it's the Euphrates drying up or just some of the things that are going on in the world. But uh, I, that's another conversation for another day. But I do look forward
Sure.
to it, and yeah, we've got this comeback that's already happened, but we know in the future that it's already laid out. He's
Mm,
coming back. There's gonna be
right.
another comeback,
Yeah.
and it's not often that you automatically know there's a comeback
Right.
coming.
Yeah.
We know there's times in the past where the announcers will say you left Tom Brady too much time. You left him too much time. That's a very likely comeback. That's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
This is. So looking forward to it. Uh, is there anything else you have to add?
Oh, I look forward to it, future conversations. I appreciate you having me on here. This has been a good conversation and it's a lot of fun. It's always good getting together and just talking through stuff with you, man.
It
So
it
thanks.
really is. I really thank you so much for coming on here. Uh, Obviously, as he's alluding to, and as I said, this is going to be a common occurrence here. We're going to have many, many more conversations about faith, about sports, uh, about everything. And I think even we may even go into some politics a little bit. I know that politics are a touchy subject nowadays, but I think some of the conversations that me and you can have that maybe we don't see eye to eye on everything, and that's perfectly fine. That's how it should be, and we should be able to have these conversations. And I think as two Christians, we
Mm,
can have those conversations in the way that it should be happening in the world,
yeah,
and it would be
for
a much
sure.
better example of how to do that. Um, and and I don't know, maybe we agree on way more than we think. I don't know. I know you're a
Well,
fantastic guest to have on here to talk about anything. It doesn't matter whether it's sports, politics, faith. Obviously, faith's the big one. So I'm super, super appreciative. As we close out,
I like it. I love it. I want some more.
I would greatly appreciate if you guys would all like, share, and subscribe, uh, especially now that we're going to have Kyle on here as a recurring guest. Uh, if we can at least boost these episodes that he's on here, that would be awesome. Um, and most importantly, the biggest thing is getting the word of God out there. It doesn't, I mean, sharing, as I've said, I think on every episode, is not necessarily on a platform. It's just conversations. It's just sharing Jesus with other people, whether it's direct conversations or if it's just being super nice to that waitress that's having a hard time, maybe leaving a bigger tip than maybe most people would. Being different, being that light, being salty, and just being a representative for Christ. So with that, as always, stay salty and be kind, my friends. We will see you again next time, Kyle.
thanks, Blake. It was good.